Hi guys, thanks for tuning into another episode of Nuggets News. We're back with our weekly crypto news with Michael, our head of written research over at the platform, pumping out that alpha daily still, Michael. And it's been another interesting week of geopolitics and crypto news.
Geez, has it ever? Um, yeah, we're in some turbulent times, that's for sure. But ironically, the market is like acting very differently from what it would have done previously. Traditionally the market would, absolutely nuke itself when we'd have even like a bit of a sniff of war or something like that. But we're holding pretty firm right now. So I think that store of value narrative is kicking.
Yeah, if you had said it was probably one of the black swans we mentioned, that if things heat up in the Middle East and there's talk of nukes and that, then maybe that could be the scenario where we do get a deeper retrace. But we're still hovering above 100K, even though we're seeing a bit of stock market weakness and that type of thing. So pretty amazing for Bitcoin.
Yeah, it is. Well, we'll launch into it. So obviously on the week, yeah, like we said, like we were nearly back at all-time highs only like a little bit ago, and then yeah, still holding firm. Like it wanted to dip, but then it didn't. And even just the alts was like surprisingly, we've had a little bit of a pullback here, but like ETH showed some weakness over the last couple of days, but then still, was resilient and sort of jumped back above this sort of 2,500 level. We got rejected at that 2,800 level, which we're all sort of thinking that if we got to 31, it was liftoff. But obviously, geopolitics is a complicated game, and it always seems that the second that we get any form of market momentum, we always get some sort of news that wants to drop us down. But yeah.
Yeah, and Sol with a bit of overhang supply from the pump.fun stuff, which we might talk about as well.
We are going to talk about that. Well, I'll launch in. So, this is a really cool tweet thread that kind of goes through the whole play-by-play of what's sort of been happening for those that like to keep abreast, like in detail, of what's actually happening with these conflicts. So, this guy, Nadev Ayal, this is a very interesting thread. It goes back to like, I guess, the recent history and sort of talks about exactly what's happening right here. Um, I don't really believe like narratives anymore. Like we're all pretty jaded on mainstream media. Like there's obviously stuff going on behind the scenes about why all of this is happening and why all of a sudden it's important for the US to like make sure that Israel's case here is valid. But I'll let everyone make up their own minds about what's happening. But for those that are interested, this is a very interesting thread. But obviously this all affects us. It's all going to affect us.
Yeah, and for more info on all that, obviously follow the Evil Elite series and some of the guests I've had on, some of the guests I've got lined up with the deep dive into Israel and the Middle East and what's really pulling the strings in the world of politics and news and everything.
Mm. All right. Well, what we're seeing right now is we've seen some massive accumulation from whales right here. So 3.3 billion in inflows. This is like just people who have got cash and people who have got Bitcoin are just doubling down on their conviction. And so this is obviously why the price has been so stable, because it used to be just like it was sailor or bust, but we've got a lot of people now who are very, very like very convicted that Bitcoin is the path. And so we're just seeing, strength, and it's showing in the price as well.
Yeah, and with our strategy and with Philip's data, these are the sort of things while we've still got green lights, these are not the things you see at the very top of a market, the biggest wallet holders and whales accumulating, they're unloading at the top of a market.
Yes, exactly. This was really interesting as well, and all the stacks community would be loving this right now. So Tim Draper's a mega investor, and he's just like pretty much bull posting about stacks right now. So yeah, I know that the we've got a really strong stacks community here, and this is obviously very bullish for the stacks project itself and just for the Bitcoin ecosystem.
Yeah, and they've got that sort of institutional backing that seems to be growing because these big guys, like for those that don't know, Tim Draper, I think it was 2013 that he really started going all in on Bitcoin on mainstream media, and people calling him crazy. So he's got a lot of money behind him and a good track record. And this is what Stacks is targeting: that institutional investors to get some yield on their Bitcoin and to help grow that total value locked and unlocked Bitcoin DeFi. And they're clearly the leading Bitcoin layer two still, even though price has been lagging. There's been a few of those proposals that people weren't happy about with the change in the inflation rate and stuff, but it's still a gem for me.
Yep. The other one is well is I guess now ETH has got its own micro strategy, and we spoke a little bit about this, but bang, already acquired 175K ETH, like just like that. So there's that 500 million right now, and maybe that's why ETH had such a strong, I guess, price at the moment, because it seems like it normally would have nuked itself, but nope, it's now got its own Michael Saylor. So, and his name is Joe Lubin.
Fantastic news for ETH holders.
So I think what we've got coming right now is we've got an ETF, probably alt season coming. So this was here, which was asked by, I guess, the SEC for amendments made to the Solana ETFs. So they've all been asked to specifically sort of like fine tune some of their applications, and we saw this happen with both the Bitcoin one and the Ethereum one. That rather than getting rejected, they were just sort of like delayed, and the can was kicked down the road while like some fine tuning was happening. So this has just happened on all of the applications for the Solana ETF. And we're actually seeing more of this happening as well. Like the fact that Solana now, it's pretty odds on likely that we'll see an ETF this year for Solana, but it's not going to be just Solana either. I'm actually thinking that we'll have an XRP one, and Polkadot has also been told the same thing. So their due dates were both delayed. Again, same sort of thing. Like we're not saying no, we're just going to say not yet, and it was moved. So now I think sort of we're coming into late July on answers on both XRP and Polkadot, and it looks like Solana's imminent.
Setting up, if you've been following, our portfolios and been weighted heavily in these more blue chip top end of town, this is where the institutional money is flowing, which has been the driver of this cycle so far. So it's, all looking really good for a good finish to the year.
We've got news this week as well about JPMorgan has sort of trademarked that JPMD, and everyone was thinking, okay, here comes their stable coin. But it's looking like maybe it's not a stable coin. What it actually is going to be is a tokenized deposit into their bank account, which is outrageous. Because let me just unpack this for people. So if you haven't actually played around with using a DeFi app before or provided liquidity, when you provide some sort of deposit into Uniswap, you get given an LP token. And that LP token is like a receipt of your position inside that protocol, and you get a distribution of fees. Obviously, you're providing liquidity, you get a percentage of the fees. And so this is why these DeFi applications and the DEXs are so like revolutionary. It's because all of the funding and the liquidity behind them is the users, the people, it's us. Now, people have got cute with what you could do with these LP tokens. And, back in DeFi summer of 2020, you could deposit these LP tokens and you could farm another token, and then you could take that token and farm that token somewhere else. And we got all these fruit salad types of name protocols that were popping off. Well, now if we're going to get a tokenized deposit or a tokenized receipt of our bank deposit, and then we can then be using that for collateral elsewhere, like they've just gone full DeFi, except they're just a centralized entity.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to think about. And what will they let you do with it? What chain, are they going to put it on? And if it is a decentralized chain, how are they going to censor this? And like if they need liquidity, if there's like a banking, solvency issues and all this sort of thing. And is it more of a house of cards for the fractional reserve banking to now be giving more IOUs on their fractional reserves that, in theory aren't even there? Like, I'm wondering how this all ties into, the issuing of central bank digital currencies and where they want to go with it all.
I just want to clarify for everyone, I'm not bullish on this. I'm not bullish on me wanting to use this, but I think it's incredible that the technology which we've all adopted and we've been talking about for 5, 6, 7 years, depending on how long you've been in the space, is now absolutely going mainstream. And so rather than me wanting to FOMO in on JPMD, I think it just shows that, your blue chip DeFi protocols is the future, because look, what's the saying? First they ignore you, then they mock you, then they fight you, and then you win. Like, well, this is winning for DeFi right here.
Particularly in the context of what we spoke about, I think it was last week's episode with Uniswap and Aave, and these ones kind of getting the green light and how they're seeing that growth and interest. And maybe this is the banks going, oh, we need to do something to play catch up.
And literally just turning into like mimic DeFi protocols.
Yeah.
On the opposite end of the scale, you've got Tron, which is now looking like it's going to go public. So the company behind Tron and I guess the TRX token is now looking like Justin Sun is trying to offload. And it might be, he's always been a controversial figure at various different times. I think he's been on the run. So, yeah, I don't know what the play is here.
I think he was trying to work his way in with one of Trump's sons to help get this going as well, the political sway and donation angle. So interesting to see how Tron, I'm kind of amazed that Tron has still stayed reasonably high up, and I know people use it for a lot of the stablecoin transfers now between exchanges and stuff. But yeah, I can't believe Tron has actually held up this well the whole time.
For those that had crypto businesses for the last couple of years, it was the norm that everyone would want to send you stable coins. They'd want to send it to you on Tron. And give us your your Tron address, your Tron wallet. And I just flat out refuse now. Like, if you're gonna send me stable coins, you know, I'm not taking it on Tron.
Yeah, okay.
Um, all right, so Solana. So this has been a very interesting one, and we've been obviously talking a lot about Pump Fund and the fact that Solana's effectively become an app chain for Pump Fund right now. This is pretty ominous, that the fact that the price chart has almost been mirroring the selling of Pump Fund, and selling of Sol from the Pump Fund team rather. So you can obviously go and check the chart here and see exactly when they've been selling as when Sol has been having price dips. And so this is the issue, I guess, when all of your activity gets concentrated around like a dubious use case, it's going to pretty negatively affect your chart.
Yeah, and as
Um,
we said, but how much money they've extracted from users, because they make money from fees, so they make money on the huge pumps and the huge dumps, and then they're going to sell these huge amounts of Sol on market, dumping the price down of the own ecosystems. It's kind of showing that, I don't know, do they really care about that ecosystem that much, or the users that much? It's just not really a good look, and puts that overhead pressure on price for Sol.
I don't have the tab for it, but I did see this week that one of the founders was arrested, um, from Pump Fund and in his New York apartment. So yeah, I don't know. Like, this was always very speculative. I think this kind of robbed us of a 2025 bull market so far. Pump Fund did.
Mm.
It just meant that it was Bitcoin and these tokens. And it's probably the reason why we've had so much fight around ETH not doing anything and all the other sort of majors. But so I've got obviously a very mixed opinion here, because obviously it's great that people are coming on chain, but for what reason? Not the reason that I would have hoped.
Yeah, once we get rid of the degeneracy, which I think everyone's kind of over now, I'm sure we'll see it again at some point in maybe a
Yeah, it'll
different
come back.
sector or whatever. But yeah, either way, I think we've seen probably the last of those live streams and craziness.
Yeah. Well, the other one that is obviously gained a lot of traction and attention is Hyperliquid. So we spoke about Hyperliquid very early, and the price is absolutely mooning. It's at an insane like FDV valuation right now, but there's still bullish sentiment on the chart. And we spoke about this several months ago when I only had minor adoption here. So for those that want to come and get involved, we follow these trends and we keep across them. But it looks like they're just absolutely eating the lunch of all of the centralized exchanges right now, and there's actually some real fear in the market. We've seen that there was like a like a supposed attack takedown on Hyperliquid a couple of months ago from some of the centralized exchanges, and they have been very reluctant to list the Hype token. We're not saying that these are the goody two shoes either. Like, there's been some, you know, I raised eyebrows around whether or not the Hyperliquid chain is that decentralized, but just generally they are. This is DeFi eating CeFi lunch.
I think it's a result of how strict even exchanges are getting now. They're forcing working with regulators and banking partners, and the days of not really being KYC and moving around huge amounts and all that are kind of over. So people are finally looking for decentralized alternatives, which is what we set out to build all along.
Yeah. So I would pay attention to the Hyperliquid ecosystem, everybody, because it's now going to be exactly what Uniswap is doing, where Uniswap's allowing protocols to hook into their liquidity. Hyperliquid is doing the same. So there's going to be a whole bunch of businesses which are just built on top of the Hyperliquid liquidity pool, where people don't need their own liquidity engine or their own bucket of money. They can literally just have a front end for these websites and these tokens. So pay attention here. Like, the price is insanity at like a FDV of whatever it is. Like, it's already sort of top 10 territory. Um, but yeah, I think this is still going to do things. So I'd watch that ecosystem.
Fantastic. Well, guys, that's it for another week. You can head over to nuggetsnews.com.au for the free newsletter, all our written research on the platform and model portfolios, or our high net worth VIP services. But Michael, thanks as always, and we'll chat to you again next week. Cheers, guys.